Hi, this is an instructional video to help you do this project, 16th note funk writing assignment. We're doing this in Finale. So the first thing you have to know is that you have to have access to this main tool palette. You can have access to the rest palette and to the note palette, and these are all available under the window menu right there. The file might sometimes gets a little bit jumbled, so you may need to go to this articulation tool, click on that. You'll see these little handles. Click and drag these up higher. These are indications about the hi-hat. So the hi-hat is closed at the beginning, and it's closed all the way till here, the very last hi-hat. So these should be lined up above those places. Thing is that we have to use two different layers. Layer 1 is going to be black, and layer 2 is red. So the only place you should have two different layers is in the drums. And the way you switch layers is a couple of different ways to switch them. One is to go down to this lower left corner and click. When you want to go to the lower layer, which is for the kick drum, you go to layer 2 like that. And when you want to switch back, you go like that. There's also a shortcut, which is Option Command 1 to be in layer 1, Option Command 2 to be in layer 2. So also in this file, I see that there's an extra layer here, an extra rest in layer 2. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to go to layer 2 and just click on this here and just erase that. Just go over here and erase this one too. Now the way I navigate, I'm going back to layer 1, the way I navigate is that you have a note, whatever value, right? And you have to stay with whatever note you're clicking into. So I'm clicking into a 16th note, so I got to have a 16th note. I can click in there, and then I can just, with my arrow keys on the keyboard, I can just right arrow or left arrow to move right and left. And then if I need to go up and down vertically, I can hold down Command while I'm operating the up and down arrows, and that will allow me to go between different notes and staves like that. Okay, so moving left to right is arrows, left and right arrows. Moving up and down is Command plus arrows. Command plus arrows. You can't just, if you just move it without holding down Command, it will actually move the note. But if you want to just navigate to get to a place, you have to hold down Command. All right, so now that we got that all out of the way, we need to accomplish the assignment. So the easiest thing to do first is to do the voice leading. And by the way, Command Z will always undo whatever you just did. There's a tool in Finale called the filter, and you get to it by going to Edit. So anytime you need to copy something where you only want to copy selected things, you just go there and you edit filter, and you can choose to copy only notes or only chords or whatever. So right now it's preset to copy only notes. So I can go to this tool, the selection tool, and click on that and copy that over to here. There it goes. So you copy, Command C is copy and Command V is paste. Now we're going to do voice leading, so we grab a whole note. You can start with root position chord, and then you can take notes down an octave until they are voice led. So the shortcut for that is, remember, you can move between notes with Command arrow up and down. So you just do Shift and arrow down, and that takes that down an octave. And then I go to this one, and now I've got good voice leading. See, common tones, etc. So that's the voice leading part. Make sure you've spelled your chord correctly. Now in this part, you are writing a kick drum part to go with the bass. Now the crucial thing is that all your bass attack points are the same as your bass attack points. However, kick drum does not have any sustain, so what we do is we never write more than a quarter note, and then we use durations to fill up a beat. So what do I mean by that? Well, I can go to put in my attack points on the kick drum exactly the same as the bass. But look what happens. Well, first of all, I have to switch to layer 2. Got to switch to layer 2 to do this. So I go to layer 2. And then I put in my attack points. Okay, so far so good, no problem. Now, I have to fill up the rest of this beat here, right? I can't just leave it blank. This is a separate part. It's got to add up to a beat. This has got to add up. This whole lower line has to add up to 4 beats. Okay. So I could put a rest here, and one way to do that is to go and grab a rest. Another way is to get the note value and put it in, and then when it's still selected, hit R for rest. But that's not what we usually do with kick drum. What we do is we actually go to whatever is the last note before the end of the beat and just make it long enough to last to the end of the beat. So think about what note would fill up the rest of this beat, what note value. And hopefully you realized it would be a dotted eighth note. So that's what you put in the kick drum. And the reason we do this is so that things are easier to read, so we don't have as many like separate symbols to have to process. So then we do the same thing here. We see, okay, we've got this beat, we've got a dotted eighth note rest, so we need to have a dotted eighth note of silence also in the kick drum. So we put that in, and I need an R for rest, and then I need an attack point that's a 16th note. I put it in right there. So far so good. Now we have a quarter note, so we do have a quarter note rest here, and that's the only way you can write that. So just to recap, even though the bass is written like this with a rest, in the kick drum we don't need that rest because there's no sustain in the kick drum, so it's going to sound the same either way. So we write it with a long duration note to finish off the beat, and that way it's easier to read. Okay? So this is the correct way to represent that in kick drum language. Oh, you know what? I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I was relating to the snare. I forgot to look at the kick drums. I mean at the bass. So actually there are 2 16th notes here. So let's finish up that measure. Let's put an 8th note rest here, and then put in the 2 16th notes to match the bass. Okay, so now we've got it right. Now it looks right. So you carry on like that, and you put in your kick drum all the way along. Now at the last measure you have a more complicated rhythm. You got to follow that, and the same thing's going to happen. You're going to do away with any unnecessary rests. You're going to make notes have a longer duration when they can to finish up a beat or to fill in a beat. All right, so watch out for that part. All right, then when you're done, to play it back, to make sure it's playing back, let's talk about audio. You go up to MIDI audio, you click on device setup, audio setup, and click on that, and then you make sure that your output is what you're listening through. Now right now mine says Telestream audio capture because I'm making this video, it's going into this program, but you would put something like external headphones or maybe your speakers or whatever you're listening to, right? And then you would say okay, and then play it. It should work then. Sometimes Finale, if it's left open for a long time, like hours, it gets messed up and you have to always save what you've done and then restart. Now I mentioned in the orientation video on Finale that you should always go to Finale up here and go to Preferences and click on Save and choose Auto Save every so often. I like to set it to be 5 minutes. You could even make it be 3 minutes, so then the maximum amount of work you would lose would be 3 minutes of time of work. And then you have to say apply. By the way, before we go there, you'll see, well, let's do it, apply. Then you have to go and see folders, and that shows you where it will be. It'll be in your home folder, documents, Finale files, backups. That's where you'll retrieve it if your computer did crash back to the project. So you know how to complete that part of the project. Now down here, you have to do the opposite. You have to take a kick drum part and make the bass work with it. Okay, and what we're doing is we're doing the same exact attack points as the kick drum, 1E and then ah, ah, the ah of 2 and the ah of 3, right? But we have a choice with bass. The bass can either be sustaining or it can be short, okay? So right now it's written so that the bass will sound very short, okay? But I do have the option. I can still keep that attack point, and I could actually make this a longer note by making it a dotted eighth note, and it would sound like this. And so either way is technically correct, but I just want to make you aware of that option. But I recommend that you just stick with the exact same note values that you have in the kick drum, just to make it easier for you doing this for this first time. So that would mean you would make this a dotted eighth note. Then if you want to experiment with having it be shorter, you can do that. But if you want, but this is a good way to just begin, right? So you needed that, you got that happening. Then we need, looks like we need a dotted eighth note. So I navigated to the eighth note rest, and I'm just hitting the period sign, which adds the dot. It looks like we have too many beats in this measure, so you can just delete that for now. Delete this, we can add them in later. And then now we need a 16th note. So we do that. Oops. All right, and then we need another 16th note, and we need another eighth note rest, a dotted eighth note rest, which I'm going to do there, and I'm putting in another 16th note, and then I've got a quarter note rest right now. Okay, so what I have so far is a bass line that precisely matches the kick drum. That's what we're looking for, and it sounds like this. And what's good about it is it's clearly expressing the root. That's what we want to do. However, we have learned that bass lines can actually be more elaborate than that. They can go to other notes, like the fifth, or maybe the flat 7 or the third. So we have that option, right? So here's what the instructions say. Express the root at the beginning of the measure. You can experiment with using other chord tones later in the measure. Notice it says chord tones. Don't just use any random note. Rhythmically should hit all the same attack points as the kick. And if you want to, you could put in extra attack points on the snare, but if this is the first time you're doing this kind of thing, maybe you should stay away from that. Just stick to the kick drum. Okay, now here's the part that is really precise that you have to follow. You have to use double chromatic approaches towards the end of each measure, leading by half step into the target note of the following measure. What does that mean? It means that you have to have 2 chromatic notes leading by half step into this note. And they should be 16th notes so that they go right into there smoothly. All right, so the way we're going to do that is turn this into an eighth note rest, and then pick our 2 16th notes. Now remember, the definition of an approach note is a note that moves by step into a target, so it can be a whole step or a half step. But this is specifically saying that you have to do a double chromatic approach. A double chromatic approach is 2 half steps leading by half step into a target. So what's a half step above F? Well, F sharp. What's another way to say F sharp? G flat. And what's a half step above G flat? G natural. Okay, so if I were to, that's G natural, right? So now I have a double chromatic approach into my target notes here. The only thing I have to do is change this into a dotted eighth note. Okay, so here's what it sounds like. Okay, so now we have a good bass line. We got a nice little chromatic approach there, sounding good. Now, there is one more choice. You notice that I didn't say you had to go down into the note. I just said a double chromatic approach. So that means you could actually have a double chromatic approach from below as well. Let's see what that would sound like. So what's a half step below F? Well, it's the note E natural, and the way you change that from an E flat to an E natural is by hitting the N key. By the way you change any pitch once it's selected is the plus will raise it by a half, and the minus will lower it by a half. Okay? So this is going to be a half step below E natural, so that means it's going to have to be an E flat, but I think it's going to be better to call it a D sharp. That's the better way to write that, because it helps us see that it's ascending. So we also have another double chromatic approach here, but it's coming from below. Let's see what that sounds like. Now let me show you how to play back at will. You play back at will by going to the selection tool, which you can go to by hitting the escape key. And then you select a measure you want to play back from, and then you just hold down the space bar and click. So both of those ways to approach this are correct. You can choose whichever one you like the best. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, then you just carry on in the same fashion, precisely matching the kick drum rhythm with the bass, but always putting in that double chromatic approach to the next root. Okay, so you're going to take this rhythm and do it again here. You can literally just copy and paste this. And then you're going to create it. Now you're going to create an F bass line, same rhythm that's written here, and you're going to have a chromatic approach either down into or up into the C bass note. And then you're going to, once you've got your F bass line, you can copy and paste it there, and then you'll have a complete bass line. Okay? And that's how you finish it. Now I'll mention one more thing. Sometimes we might write a bass line like this, but we actually do want it to be shorter. So the way you can do that is to go to this, you want it to sound shorter, that is. You can go to this articulation tool and choose, and click on it, and click on it once, and you can choose this staccato mark, a little dot. Okay, say select, and it will appear there, and now that note will sound shorter when it. Hear the difference? This one's short and this one's long. So okay, so that's just another bonus bit of information. All right, so when you're all done, you should have a part up here that plays back with a nice voice leading and has the kick drum matching the bass line. And then down here you should also do your voice leading, and you should have your bass line all worked out, and then be able to play that back, and then you can hand it in, save it. Don't forget to set the save settings I put up there, and keep saving it as well. Command S to save, and you should be all set.